Well, today I've got a slightly different video lined up for you guys. One of the most common questions I get is, how do you get involved in the industry? And it's a question that I can't really give a copy-paste answer to, so a lot of times I find myself not responding to people. And so I wanted to kind of take a look at how some other people have gotten involved in the industry and to show you guys that there's not one copy-paste answer. And I figured this would be a great way to kick off a little series where I get to talk to some of my friends in the event industry who may or may not be involved with lighting at all. And today, I thought we would kick it off with my good friend, Gary Ford. Now, Gary, he is an audio guy, so please forgive him in advance for that. But, he's actually calling right now. Let's get him online here. Hey, Gary.
Hey, how you doing, Christian?
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Doing all right.
Yeah, I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. You know, just living the dream, enjoying my quarantined time off. I see you got your SM7B set up, so you're a real audio guy.
I am your T-shirt kind of says it all, man. You're not a real audio guy unless you got a T-shirt with, your face on it.
With your face written all over it and stunning event photos, text. Yeah, that's right.
Good stuff.
So thanks for taking the time to sit down and talk with me, and I guess the broader, not only the personal me, but all of us here are interested in kind of hearing how you got involved in what you do. And I gave the people kind of a little bit of an intro, but you're actually pretty close to us. We're about 220 miles apart right now. You're out in what, Tri-Cities, Washington?
Yes. Yeah, I'm about 200 miles east of you.
Yeah, so we're practicing the social distancing part in accordance with CDC guidelines, so that's always good.
Right. It's really good.
Yeah. So I figured we'd kind of kick this off. I have some backup questions in case I have the ultimate of brain farts and can't think of anything, but I wanted this to be more of a discussion because we're friends. I mean, we've been doing shows together for, I don't know how long, probably 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I think so. That seems about right.
Yeah. So I kind of preface this by saying that there are so many different ways of working in this industry, both on the lighting side of things like I am and the audio side of things, but even on your side, there's a whole different range of avenues to work with because, you can either be a touring tech, you can be a touring front of house guy. You can basically sit at home and do system design too. That's another viable option as well.
Sure.
Or, go on. I'm curious, what all have you done in the industry? Obviously, you own a company now,
right,
and you do a lot of live productions, but where exactly did that come from?
Well, it's kind of almost a funny story, but I was that nerdy kid in grade school, and I literally was auditioning for the school play in the first grade, walked up to the microphone, froze solid, and of course the teacher says, "Next." So as I'm exiting stage left, I noticed this thing with huge levers on it sitting over there. And I kind of just stood there for a minute, and I stopped and was just looking at this thing and super curious about it. And the teacher wandered by and said, do you know what that is? And I said, I have no idea what this is, but it looks really cool. And she says, well, that's the lighting controller for the stage. And we're looking for a lighting tech for the play. Would you be interested in that job? And I asked her, I said, does that mean I don't have to go out and say any lines or be in front of people? She goes, you can stand right here. And I said, amazing, I'll take that job. So
that's awesome.
It kind of began there, but it doesn't really add up in your mind until later that you're either cut out for it or you're not. But, and then on through school, I was sound guy for the stage band in middle school. The kid they called out of class to put the PA system together because I was the only one that knew how to do it. So I was just that nerdy kid.
That's great.
Yeah, that's kind of how it all began for me. And then from there, I kind of became an adult and all my friends were in bands. So we loved to play music, and we ended up going on the road with the band back in the '80s, which was a really good time. Got to
Maybe
do
the golden era, right?
Oh my God, the clubs back then were just a great time. What could you say? But it all good things must come to an end, and it all kind of ended at the end of the '80s there, and it was time to figure out something else. So from there, it kind of spawned into doing more business ownership and getting a system of my own and being able to rent it out, which, going into it, you never know where you're going to end up. And it was a clear case of that, because it really didn't go a place that I ever expected, but it exceeded all my expectations, 100 times over. So pretty amazing. Super thankful.
That's fantastic. So how do you make that transition? Because I know for me, I never really I never made the full transition into having a full-blown operation where I have employees and I have a literal business operation. I've always just been the sole proprietor who owns a bunch of gear that just kind of gets rented out, and I don't have to have a whole lot of overhead. So I guess that's a question that has always been something I've worried about. It's something I struggle with right now, is like how to make that transition into having like real overhead expenses and having a real operation where people are depending on you as the person who is in charge of everything.
Right.
So was there like a specific year you can remember, like, okay, this is where we really need to invest in a lot of real pro gear to continue getting these shows, or was that really so black and white?
No, it really wasn't that black and white. It has kind of evolved over time. But originally, I was working for my father, driving truck. He owned a trucking company, so I was doing that, and it just wasn't my passion. I kept dreaming about building a big sound system and doing shows, and it at one point I went to my wife and I said, I need 30 grand to build a sound system. And she, mind blown. You want to do what? And we had,
for those of you who don't know, she's an accountant by trade, right? Originally?
Yes.
And still
is. In fact, she's further educating herself in that as we speak with current state of affairs. So
yeah. I'd say I was just going to say I was reading some literature last night about I know you and we both have this YouTube rabbit hole that we like to go down. I don't know how YouTube manages to recommend these recommended videos, but I started watching CPA videos last night.
Nice.
Regarding the current situation and how the new bill may or may not be helping people. So I'm fascinated to hear that she's doing some more education on that. That's very cool.
Well, it's really a matter of, we don't want to stop doing what we're doing. We definitely need to try to get to the other side of this thing, which is that's the thing in itself. The business that I'm in at the level I'm in, it will eat itself alive in a matter of months. So it's taken a lot of planning and preparation and fortitude to keep it alive at this point. But that's the intent, and that's what we're doing. So it's one of those things that she was really looking for something that she could do remotely. And, in the event this does fall over and we got to do something else, well, there's one thing we can do. I haven't quite figured out what I'm going to do yet, but I'll figure something out, if it comes to that.
Sure.
But
well, you've got that big shop space. I'm sure you could put that to good use in a million different ways, right?
Oh, man. In my head's in so many different things. I mean, I love product development. I've always been a shade tree speaker designer, and that's one of the things I'm pretty passionate about. So it would be fun to kind of pursue that a little bit. But, you got to go with the bird in the hand always. And we're so invested in production that, it would be silly to do anything else at this point in it and not, try to see this through to the other side.
And speaking of being invested in production, you guys are the number one ElAcoustics I guess what they have, the like ElAcoustic network, right, where
Yeah.
you can link different suppliers together and basically build a rig anywhere in the country or the world from these suppliers, and you're a part of that, right?
Yeah. It's the ElAcoustics rental network, and it's a global standard. So when you get into the network, you've got to maintain a certain level of equipment, and it's kind of the best part about it is, man, I could fly into anywhere in the world and order up an ElAcoustics rig that I would design and have it just dropped in on me, and away we go. And I know exactly what to expect. It would be like you ordering up an MA2 or an MA3. You kind of know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know enough about lighting to even be dangerous. So
I know our Venn diagrams kind of just barely touch, and then they just repel away from each other on that, I think.
right.
I think it's always just kind of fascinated me because you've done. I remember when I first. I don't want to say like first met you because I can't like pinpoint an exact date where I was like, oh, this is the date or the show where I met Gary Ford. Because I'm very bad with dates, times, places, and relationships in general. So first of all, thank you for, I guess, keeping up with our friendship over the years. It's a difficult thing for me, and I just wanted to primarily say thank you for always being supportive and friendly. And you're the one who came up with this whole idea for doing this video anyways. So thank you for that.
Oh, dude. Likewise, I got a ton of respect for you. It's been amazing to see a young man like yourself go so far so quickly and not fake it. I mean, you're doing this for
Trying
real.
not to.
A lot of times you'll see the young guys, they kind of get it in their head they're going to try to do something, and they jump in kind of unknowingly. And man, that's a painful thing. It's always way better if you kind of get on your game a little bit and then jump in, which
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I definitely have some imposter syndrome. I don't know if you're like the opposite of an imposter though. You're the very humble, sit back and enjoy what you've built, and not talk too much about it. And I admire that a lot. That's a quality I wish I had.
Well, it's something my father probably instilled in me, and that's that actions always speak louder than words. And
Yeah, I love that.
if you show up and build a nice big rig and it's super awesome and everybody digs it, then that kind of speaks for itself.
Yeah. And speaking of big rigs, I went on this tangent and you brought me right back in line. So I appreciate that. I remember I was, I think, attending because before I ever worked on these shows, I was literally one of the rave kids.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, there's some pictures floating out there. Maybe I'll find one to post up on the screen while we're doing this. But I believe it was the first Paradiso where I was working as a lighting tech, and I didn't really know a whole lot. I was filling in for someone who called out like the day before the show. And I just remember that the main stage had this ridiculous amount of subwoofers. And you were the person who was at front of house. And of course, you're just kind of like the cool guy who sits back there and doesn't really say much. But you had this huge system. And again, I know nothing about audio, so I see like 100 boxes of what I now know are the SB 28s. Is that what those are?
Yeah, I think we had 60 of them that first year.
Yeah, ridiculous amount.
Ridiculous, yes.
Well, what's the largest, I guess, SB 28 array you've done?
That was it, and
that was the one.
Yeah, and we did 60 that first year, just because the promoter was so used to the numbers game. I need 100 subwoofers, and I did the design and went, man, you're just wasting money on that. Your money would be better spent doing a little different thing. But you got to do it once to make them believe. So we rolled in with 60, and we weren't even able to use them. Realistically, in the venue, 48's a much better number. It's a more balanced system. Everything just works together better. So from then on, we went.
Is that due to power or making it cardioid array? Why does 48 make that the number?
Oh, so the way we do that venue, in a variable sense of it, because we did it a little bit different this last year, but the most cohesive way we found to do it was to take 48 subwoofers and stand them on end, and then we do a digital delay arc. So we DSP them into a shape that fills the venue. And the physical dimension of 48 is what really fit the space better. 60 kind of ran off to one side, which was kind of a bummer, and it ran off to the side where there wasn't any people, because we just ran out of places to put subs on the stage right side. So it was loaded more heavily on stage left, but it physically fit better with 48. That venue is so big and so uphill that it makes more sense to do more stuff in the air and not as much on the ground. So we just kind of put more subs in the air and we put a few less on the ground. And
gotcha.
It made for a smoother, nicer sound in PA, in my opinion. But yeah.
So the process you're talking about here is more like system tech and system tuning and system design, right?
Right. Well, it starts with design, of course. Yeah.
Right. From the top. And what do you find more, I guess, I don't want to say like fulfilling, like it's some sort of, grandiose project that you're working on, because of course this is work, like we're all going to work to do this, but what do you enjoy more, the system design process and charting this out and making these graphs of, like, I've seen your SPL graphs of like overlays on top of PDFs of venues, like where it shows the energy levels at different frequencies. Is that more fun for you to create a nice, flat, even playing field for everybody else? Or do you enjoy doing the actual front of house mixing during the show?
Oh man, I like to drive. I want my foot on the gas pedal. That's the only part that's fun. The rest is just work.
Really?
Yeah. Well, not really. The design is fun. It's with ElAcoustics, it's really progressive. It's almost like you got to stay up with it. They're always improving the software. They're always improving the equipment. There's new processing details to work out, and it's kind of a constant flow of that. So you got to stay in with it and stay up on it. But the results have consistently improved too. So it's worth it. Yeah, it's all fun.
It's funny you say that, because I always, and this is just again, our Venn diagrams not overlapping enough. I always tend to think of audio as more of just kind of like the staple of the show that doesn't really change, and you have the same boxes for 15 or 20 years, and then it pays itself off, and then either you keep the system and continue to make money, buy more boxes, I guess, reinvest, or buy a whole new system. So it's interesting you say that there's a lot of upkeep with the, I don't want to say minutia, but the details of the processing, I guess, right? And like LA Manager, LA Net, those are the things that are getting updates frequently. Yeah.
So they're pretty kind about trying not to do that to you too frequently, especially in season. Basically from May to November, they may do one amplifier update in there, but they get it that everybody's out on tour, everybody's busy, and the last thing you want to do to start your day is to have to update the firmware in 200 amplifiers when you're on the road. I mean, nobody wants to do that. So they're super cool about that. We'll usually see maybe one or two updates in a year, and they're, it's always worthwhile, man. When they give you an update, you're like, yeah, that was one of the things I wanted. And so it's cool and it's progressive, and that's what keeps it entertaining over time.
Yeah, I think MA and ElAcoustics are very similar in that regard, where they really do listen to user feedback.
Right.
For the most part, there are a couple things that I feel like will never get updated and never get fixed, because they've been on my wish list and everybody else's wish list for forever, and they still haven't been fixed. And I know they're at the top, but it's cool to see that these companies, for the most part, are listening to user feedback, and it's crazy. I talk about this a lot, in that all of these companies, for the most part, are made up of people who were in our shoes at one point or another. There's not too many of these companies, unless you get into the large like corporate conglomerates where like companies have bought other companies. But at the root level, a lot of these companies are built from people who were touring or who did concerts or live events for a long time. And I think that might be unique to our industry, or one of the unique things about our industry.
I agree to a point. I also feel like that at the upper level, at the engineering level, that these guys don't really come from the same place we do. They're much more educated, much more dedicated, if you will. Your typical sound guy I don't have the level of education to be developing product at the level that the products are today. These are super smart guys. They're the Christian Jacksons of the world.
Don't say that.
Hey, you're the one wearing my t-shirt, so
I had to represent a little bit. Plus, it was like laundry day, and this was the only one I haven't worn during our quarantine. I'm not actually wearing pants right now, so I think that's your next move, is to
too much information, but thank you.
Well, I guess that's one of the advantages of this whole situation that we find ourselves in now. And I made a video on this topic last week or 10 days ago, something like that, about finding things to improve upon in your own set of skills. And I was curious, is there anything you're working on? I know I saw on your channel you uploaded a time lapse of you cleaning one of your analog boards. I think it was which board was it?
Oh, it's a recent purchase, a Midas Verona, and it's sitting right behind me, and it's a studio piece. And
Beautiful.
Old analog live boards are worth nearly nothing. And for me in the studio, it just added something to my workflow that I enjoyed, that kind of took me back to a place that I had to leave behind, that I never wanted to. I never wanted to leave the analog world, but it just came to a point that you had to. And man, it's so nice to get a little bit of that back, even though it's kind of inappropriate to do it live, just logistically. But in a studio, man, that's what everybody's doing these days. Everybody's running a hybrid studio. And mine is a very small scale thing. I don't consider this to be a professional studio. It's a hobby for me. And it gives me an opportunity to do some mixing. Like right now, when I don't have an opportunity, I can come out here and just be able to mix and mix in the analog world, which is, oh my God, what an awesome thing to be able to do.
So what are you using as the source for your tracks when you're doing your analog mixing at home? Do you have a big audio interface that is feeding into the inputs of that desk, or what exactly what's your signal flow look like for that?
Oh man, that's a good point. And that's on my list of videos to make, is to do a hybrid signal flow. But basically it's a Pro Tools based studio. So I've got a full in the box Pro Tools thing going. And it also goes in with my live consoles. We're currently running a Avid S6L, which will go direct to Pro Tools. So you get the quality of incredible preamps now that we take out on the road, and the ability to go straight into Pro Tools with it. It's amazing. And then you bring that back into your studio and you do the mixing of it. You get a rewind button in the studio that you don't have that in live. So
right.
So it's fun to come back and really fix some of the things that maybe weren't quite right. But it's also kind of a tough business model. With things like Fiverr and all that going on, man, you can get stuff mixed for almost nothing. So, is this the wave of the future for me to to have a revenue stream? I don't think so. It's probably more the other way, more of a hobby for me and something to spend money on.
Hey, I'm right there with you. I kind of feel like I've done a similar thing recently where for a couple minutes a week, I'll just cruise all of the used listings, either on eBay or used lighting, just to see what kind of old, weird consoles are available.
I do that a couple times
becoming
a
an
day.
addiction. Yeah.
Way hooked.
I think you might be more correct with, I may have underestimated how much time I spend on that, but
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes of Facebook and Instagram and then 2 hours of reverb and Facebook Marketplace, hunting for the deal. And,
And I mean, if you can buy it for less than it's worth, then you're making money. That's how I justify it in my head.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I'd run with that.
That's why I finally bit the bullet on buying the console, because I was like, man, I can rent this out for, if I rent it out for 2 years, it basically pays for itself. So
Right.
it's stupid to not buy it. It's just coming up with the funds to do it in the first place. So I'm assuming you, like 90, probably even higher than that, 95% of companies and providers in this industry are essentially buying all this equipment with loans, and they don't own it 100% outright. And this is posing a very interesting issue for our industry, specifically with having all of our gigs evaporate for a whole period of 3 months, right at the tail end of our normal dead period anyways.
Oh man.
So
yeah, it couldn't be worse, man.
The worst timing, it could not have happened. You're right on that. So I guess,
well, a couple of terms kind of come to mind. On that note, I think the highly leveraged companies, man, they're the ones that are going to really need to help to get through this. The more seasoned, kind of the older companies, at some point you really get tired of dragging a bunch of debt around, and you're kind of willing to live with a little lesser pile of gear to have a lot less debt. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just at that age where I don't have 30 years in the windshield to pay for gear.
Right.
There was 30 years in the rearview mirror where we did that. So,
yeah.
but it's it's a long game, and you got to treat it that way. It isn't, this isn't the kind of thing that you're going to jump into and do it for 5 years and retire. I mean, it's just not like that. You're always getting beat back down with technology. About the time you think you've got everything you need, a big quantum shift will come along, like line arrays, where, man, I had a beautiful conventional PA. It was the sound system of my dreams for about 2 years, and then the line arrays come out. So it took a huge hit in value, which is, that's a bummer when it does that. But
and for the people who don't know what a line, of course, I know all of the intricacies about the difference between point source and line array system. I don't actually, but what is the main difference and the advantage of a line array over point source system besides modularity?
Oh man, so the advantages are amazing. One of the big ones was, in the old days, we had very limited vertical control of a sound system. Horizontally, you could shape it pretty easily. They were trapezoid-shaped boxes. You just add a few more. You made it wider. But to make it taller or to point it uphill, it was a big challenge. And in addition to that, there's constructive interference between boxes and destructive. And a conventional rig really had a lot of destructive interference where the wavelengths just didn't add up together. They more fought with each other. So Christian Heel apparently goes to a show one day and here's a big sound system, and he's French, and he's like, I've got to fix this. So he goes and kind of comes up with a reasonable solution in a line array. And ElAcoustics was the original line array product to hit the scene, and it just changed everything. Yeah.
I did not know that.
And there was a couple of patents in there that carried their DOS waveguide, the high frequency patent, the device. It just, 20 years on a patent, right? So I think it just dried up. They were, I think VDOS came out kind of mid 90s, about 96, which would have been about the same time I fired up my company. So that patent kind of really helped that company grow and evolve and demonstrate what a line array could do, and then everybody else followed. It was kind of how that shook out.
Cool.
Well, do I get to ask you some questions?
Sure, of course.
Or is this all just one-sided? You're just going to grill me. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, one after another. I haven't even gone to my backup questions yet, so I think we're doing all right. Yeah, go right ahead.
Nice. Well, you got the first 30 minutes. I should get the second, right?
Let's do it.
Yep. So you're a Montana boy.
Born and raised.
Billings, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Billings, and then went to college in Missoula for 2 years, and then I dropped out and moved out to Seattle.
Nice. So what were you doing in college? What were you studying?
Originally, I was, one of the tech nerdy guys as well. So, more parallels, I suppose. But I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I put down a physics major.
Nice. Perfect.
I was fascinated with, the universe and the mechanics and how everything fits together, and I still am. But once I got to college and started taking all the classes, and realized that I didn't want to do anything formal. I didn't want to do anything that required me to be going through college for all this time.
Right.
And I kind of saw it as a dead end, and in a last ditch attempt to, I guess, stay in college and do the traditional route, I started taking business classes. And there was a business class that was specific to the event industry that I took. Huh. And that was my favorite class of all time. And you wouldn't expect it, that in Montana, University of Montana, there would be not only just a class, but a whole program built around the entertainment.
Right.
It was originally more of like a management class for the entertainment industry.
So I got to know, did you have any inclination that you'd end up in this industry at that moment when you started that class?
Yeah, I mean, up until then, I had been kind of operating, like I said, I never really pulled the trigger on becoming like a full-fledged company. Up until this point, I had been operating like a DJ business and had a set of speakers and had a set of lights, but I had never known outside of that realm how much bigger and more, intricate the whole industry could be. It's because, in Montana, there wasn't really a whole lot of opportunity to, see big productions, besides stuff that I wasn't interested at all in, like country concerts.
Right.
So
I did a 5-Finger Death Punch show at that college. Man, it was amazing. What a great show.
I might have been there. What year?
Oh boy. It's been 10 years ago, I'm sure.
Oh, well,
I still had an Electro Voice rig back then. So, yeah, at least
before my time.
Yeah, 7 or 8 years ago. But cool venue, cool school. I always love the Montana people, man. They can take a beating. At the end of the day, it's the
weather. It forms us.
Yeah, at the end of the day, this is a tough business. You got to be able to grind out a 20-hour day routinely, and it isn't like you're going to get a break in that 20 hours either. You may get a little something to eat thrown in front of you, but but the Montana guys, they always seem to hold up pretty good.
It's funny you mention that, because before I knew that any of this was like an actual legitimate industry, I was just a guy with a 12-foot trailer that I was towing behind a 1995 Chevy 1500, and I would go and do these shows. The cities in Montana the major cities are between like 2 and 3 hours apart. So every major market, major market for Montana is a 3-hour drive each way. And so I would book these random little one-offs either for school events like school dances, or little tiny club shows, or promoters would book DJs from actual major markets, and they would just need some sort of lighting system or some sort of sound system. So I would load up my trailer at 7 in the morning, drive 3 hours on I-90, unload this all by myself, set up the rig, flash through everything, and do all the programming, because at this time I wasn't using MA. I wasn't using anything like actually useful.
Right.
And so by the time we're like loaded in and ready for the show, I've already been working and driving for 10 plus hours. Then you got the show, and then I pack it all up. And if I'm lucky, the promoter has paid a couple of his buddies to help me load all this stuff back into my trailer. And then I leave the venue at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and make the 3-hour drive,
right.
or pull over in a rest stop area, sleep for a couple hours, and then come back home and arrive back at 7 a.m.
Yeah, that's
and
funny.
I never realized it at the time, but that was preparing me for all of this lack of sleep.
Right. Yeah, when I say tough, that's what I refer to. I mean, it's not a thing, who can win in a fist fight. It's who can stay upright for the most hours and survive with no food and no sleep, days in a row. Tough racket sometimes. But I'm sure you share this with me, man. There is no more adrenaline in this world than firing up a show for 30,000 people and just having everybody boogieing down to your gig, man. I mean, it's as good as it gets.
Yep. I think, how you're saying earlier, how you get kind of the opportunity to be the driver. It's even better feeling when, like you said, nobody really knows that you're the one who's doing all of this, but yet you're sitting back at front of house and you just see this sea of people and this big show in front of you,
right.
And everything is just running, whether or not it's actually, running efficiently or running super well. You can be having the worst day in the world. You can be having the worst load in, the worst everything.
Right.
But as soon as that show is running, everything just dissolves away and nothing else really matters. And it's such a cool feeling.
And that's the adrenaline that we get hooked on. This is an industry that when it gets in your blood, there's just no getting it back out. You're in it for life if you're cut out for it. Obviously not everybody is, but the guys I see that I've known for years that are really acclimated to it and cut out for it, just, man, they never give it up. It's cool. So you started out doing DJing and stuff like that, and now you have grown, young man.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, you're flying around. You're doing big shows. How did you get there?
Well, I wish I could say it was all on my own. The whole bootstraps mentality, but it's really not. It's a series of
that's more my
being
style.
In the right. Yeah, right. Just do everything on your own, and it'll just fall into your lap. No, that's not really how it worked. It was basically through a series of meeting people who allowed me, who unveiled like the next rung on the ladder. Because at the time when I was starting to climb this and get to the point where I eventually want to be, when I started doing that, like it's like you're climbing this ladder where you can only see the rung that you're on right now. And if you're focusing really hard on what you're doing right now, other people kind of push that cloud away and help you up to the next one. And so that's kind of an analogy for me just meeting these different people along the way. So for example, in Montana, Alex Bruce, I don't know if you're familiar with him, Montana Pro Audio. They they were basically the big provider of sound systems in Missoula. And we would just kind of work on shows together and be at the same shows together, but not really working together, if that makes sense. And Alex was one of those people who saw that, I really wanted to get into doing this for real, because there's two kinds of people who buy DJ and lighting systems. There's the people who want to do it, like you're saying, for the hobby, or just kind of carve out a little niche in their local market and just do that thing. And then there are the people who want to do it for real and do it on a bigger scale. And I think he recognized that I wanted to do it on a bigger scale. And we had been doing shows together for 2 years in Montana. And he was kind enough to pass along some contact information for the one and only Joe Cole out in Seattle. And I was going through a rough time personally when I decided to drop out of school. And it was kind of the perfect intersection of everything, where Alex knew I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out. I didn't want to go to school anymore. And I had just attended my first Paradiso.
Nice.
And I was like blown away by the whole production of everything. So
by the sound guy, right?
by the sound. Yeah, those subs were just like destroying. Yeah. And so it was like the perfect storm for getting out to Seattle. And then once I got to Seattle, right, working with Joe, he put me on all these like random gigs, both as a stagehand, as a lighting tech, and eventually, hey, do you want to go operate this daytime show for the zoo? And I remember that being like my first actual LD gig, where I was the LD and people were, coming to me as an LD, even though it was like a daytime show and didn't really matter too much. But yeah, so sorry, I don't mean to drag this whole part out, but it is like a little complex and nuanced. Then I started working at the nightclub, Q nightclub, as a way to supplement my part-time work for Joe. So during the daytime, I would do random corporate events, either for Joe or Northwest Event Technology, any number of smaller labor companies who would do like corporate gigs or whatever. So I do that during the day, and then I would work at Q nightclub at night. So my schedule was full, and I had all of the opportunity to get hands-on and learn how to do things for real, because all this time before, I had been kind of just like not faking it, because I didn't know how to do it to begin with. Like right. there was no even concept of like how I could fake it. It was just figuring it out on my own. So that was kind of how the transition happened. Then started working as a backup LD for a couple different people, primarily Eric. You and I know Eric very well.
Oh yeah.
And he was kind enough to put me on as his backup LD for one of the artists that he works with. And basically whenever he was doing a show or a festival or concert for the promoter that we were talking about earlier, I would be the one who would do like the B stage or the second stage. And that was like another big leap forward to being able to work on bigger shows and have a bigger opportunity to mess things up.
Right.
And it's you're constantly like just given enough rope to hang yourself with on all these bigger and bigger shows.
Right.
And hopefully like by the time you've built yourself up this whole time, you have enough in your back pocket of knowledge where you can pull it out, so to say. Yep. And make sure that the show still goes on.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. When I originally wanted to borrow that $30,000 to build a PA system, that would have immediately put me into the A market. And that would have been the hugest mistake ever, because I would have certainly have screwed it up. But coming up the way we did, literally with making our own gear and just kind of groveling for everything along the way. Just like you said, by the time you get there, you got your chops. So,
Yep.
you're having success. So I got to ask you, man, I've discovered in this world, a lot of people really look up to you and what you've done in such a short period of time. Who do you look up to?
That's a good question.
I stumped him.
And that's a hard one for me to answer.
I stumped
What?
Christian
Yeah,
Jackson.
you did.
Wow.
You did stump me.
Well, you could say me. That'd be fine.
Well, I do look up to you because I think
thank
that
you.
you're one of the rare examples, like I said, of someone who is humble yet does these big shows, owns a lot of gear, and realizes that. Well, for one thing, you're one of the few people who realizes that a YouTube channel doesn't just make itself. You actually have to go and do it. So,
Man,
for that, I commend you.
Subscribers. I mean, yeah. Nobody wants to subscribe these days. It's funny, but
Right, I know. It's like, what did you say? 80% of your views are from unsubscribed people?
91% unsubscribed.
91%.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody loves to
I
watch.
think this
but
video
nobody
will help you
subscribes.
with that.
Yeah, I lost.
Yeah, no, but
I lost a few
Sorry.
over the last 24 hours, and it was really, it bummed me out. It's like, man, I worked really hard to get you guys get back in here.
See, I think it would be more interesting if it showed their name every time they unsubscribed.
That would be
You
interesting.
could say,
Yeah.
and you could send them a message like, "Why did you unsubscribe?"
So other
but
than me,
to answer
there's got to be somebody.
to actually answer the question, I've been looking up more to these insane people who are Vectorworks wizards, who are MA programming masters, and they can operate a show better than anybody I've ever seen with less cues than anybody I've ever seen. It's less of like a specific person, but more a type of person. Like, for example, one of these people, he was in the live stream chat the other day of the video that I was uploading. Colin Stenzel, he's Deadmau5's LD.
Oh, nice.
And even though he talks a ton of shit and he pesters me incessantly and makes fun of me, he's still one of the people that I look up to the most, just based off of his sheer amount of knowledge of all of these systems.
Well, at the end of the day,
he's one of those guys who came up from the bottom too. So,
well, he's Deadmau5's guy, so you expect him to be a little bit prickish.
exactly,
Right?
right? Like the whole, it's a perfect fit.
Yeah, it's
So,
their community.
I
It's
don't
just
know.
how they roll.
Which is cool. And I respect that. I think it's awesome.
I think I just did my last Deadmau5 show right there. As soon as this airs,
Yeah,
I'm
you
just
think
like,
so?
no
Yeah,
more
you're
Deadmau5.
on the blacklist now.
He threw some microphones at my stage guys on a show.
That was what, Freak Night?
Yeah, I think it might have been Freak Night. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember something about. I think I was at that show.
And I'm a own up to it kind of guy. My dad always taught me, man, you
The
screw
mute button.
some. We did a sound check, and I built the show, and I saved the show. And when we came to recall the show, I had the vocal mics muted, and I neglected to unmute those. It was just that simple. It was 100% my fault. By the time word got to me to pick the mutes off of those channels, he was pissed.
Yep.
Railed me on social media the whole nine, which kind of made me a little bit famous for a minute.
Hey, any publicity, right?
If you're not going to bite the heads off of bats, just mute Deadmau5. So
Oh, my
speaking of
goodness.
bats, let's talk about COVID-19.
Yeah, might as well.
What's your take on this? I made a toilet paper run this morning at 7 a.m. and got about half
Really?
as much as I wanted. But yeah.
Well, I do have a full Kirkland, I think 36 pack. I could maybe split it in half and send a few rolls out your way, since all the shipping companies are still shipping things all over the world.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
Like, I have a shipment from China coming for a nightclub install next week or this week now.
Nice.
So I'm like, wait, is this even really a quarantine if everything is still, I just, I understand the guidelines. I understand why everything is happening the way that it is as far as the response. But
my take on it, Christian, is that I think right now it would be really irresponsible to hold an event for 30,000 people, especially sweaty ravers.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on, I get it. And I'm surprised and thankful that they're actually considering our industry as people that need help. I think that's the first time ever.
I think you're right.
I think more of the case would be that, oh, well, that's entertainment. We'll worry about that when everything else is all better.
Right.
When everybody's back to work and everybody's there, and then the bottom of the list would be entertainment. But man, we got hit so hard, so early, and fortunately with social media being what it is, we all rose to the occasion and said, hey, we're screwed. In fact, I posted kind of early on social media. I said, hey, Inslee, if you're going to brick our gigs, don't forget to shut the banks off. Because I could see how many people were affected, how quickly, in an industry that spans way beyond entertainment. There's trucking, buses, hotels, air flights, man, stagehands. Everything is in our industry. And there it was, bricked.
Totally done. Just flip of a switch.
Yeah. So I got one last question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you and I are a little bit different in our travel style of business. And I know we talked about this the other day, and I probably failed to mention that when I got into this, I had kids already. And that really kind of made me take a different path.
It anchors you down a little bit.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And I absolutely don't regret it for this reason. I've got to do sound for everybody, where maybe being a touring sound guy for one band, maybe I spent 30 years with the Scorpions. I don't think that would have really suited me. I like that, one night I'm doing Dead Mouse, and, the next night it's Joe Diffie.
Yeah.
Not
keeps you active, keeps your brain active too.
Yeah. But it's kept me close to home. I work in about a 300-mile radius doing what I do.
Right, and we were talking. I think we had a funny moment the other day when we were talking about this, in that you were saying, "Oh, I get to sleep in my own bed every night," and my retort to that was, "Yeah, but I don't have to load the trailer at 2 a.m. for a 6 a.m. load in 300 miles away." So I guess and this is more for everybody watching out there, like I said at the beginning of this, there are so many different not only types of work, but lifestyles of those types of work.
Yeah, you could literally just be working in one venue.
Yep.
Never.
Tons of house guys make a great, not a fantastic, amazing, 5-star living. But if you need to live somewhere and still be involved in this industry, you can, be a house LD, a house audio guy, and it's a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah. Well, I think you answered all my questions.
Let me see. Okay, I might have to go to my backup. I think I had one that I really wanted to.
Oh, hey, I got one more. How you liking Seattle?
So I'm like 30 minutes out of the epicenter of Seattle, like in the mountains a little bit. So it really suits me. I'm kind of the rainy type anyways. So it's nice to be up in the hills and in the trees and in the fog. So it does wonders for my mental state.
Well, I'm over here in the sunshine and wind currently.
Yep.
No.
It's a lot like Montana out there, actually.
Yeah, where I'm at, it's a lot like, especially out where Billings, where it's fairly flat and arid, I guess.
That's a very apt word.
Yeah. Okay, I do have one last thing I do want to ask you. How do you feel about your future? Where are you going to go from here?
That's a interesting question because, like I said, I've been wanting to pull this trigger on like having a real operation, and I'd never wanted to do it when it was not right, and it just hasn't felt 100% right.
Yeah.
I've had a couple opportunities to, have like an actual legit company before, but I never really thought it was the right time. But I think I'm kind of getting to that point where I want to have this organization where it's like multifaceted, and I can do the online stuff with video production. We can obviously do design and programming as the bread and butter, and kind of take a page out of a lot of these YouTubers that I watch, where they have like legit professional businesses, and then they do kind of this YouTube thing as more of a side hustle, but it's really well produced.
Yeah.
So I've gotten to the point where I'm able to hire editors and people to hold a camera. And that's, all thanks to all the people out there who have been supportive over all this time. So
man,
I'm right at that
YouTube.
point where I feel comfortable jumping off the edge and going to the next step with all of it.
Nice. I appreciate that. I follow several YouTubers that do that very thing. One of them's Amanda Wilkes, and she's a maker. But, man, just seeing how well she's expanded that operation of late is pretty amazing, And it's, I think the YouTube will probably be more of an advertising avenue for her, but 1.4 million subscribers.
It's a big number.
That's a big number. It's going to take poor old Gary Ford a long time to get to there. I don't think I'm.
You just got to post more, just like me. I got to post more too. It's it seems like it's a uphill battle, and it is but you got to remember. I mean, when did you start uploading videos?
It's only been a little bit over a year.
Yeah. Okay. If you look back at when I started uploading videos, it was like 2009 or 2010, I think. Maybe a little later. Maybe I'm dating myself a little bit. Maybe like 11 or 12. So, 8 years of passiveness.
I remember the Happy Hands videos. Those were like your early ones. I love those.
I've tried to get away from that. I just I hold my hands like this, put them down below.
Right.
But they still creep up a little bit.
No, man, I can't keep mine out of my nose. That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Turn on a camera and my nose starts itching.
Yeah. And well, you can't do that now anymore either, just because of the Rona.
So I'm going to throw this out there, but I think this virus doing what it's doing right now is going to create a few more opportunities for doing what we're doing right now. And you're already seeing it start to pop up on social media. And I'm one of those guys, man. I want to know what's around the corner and how to grab on and write it up. And man, at this point, I haven't honed in on what it's going to be, but I think there's going to be some opportunities for people to do a different thing than we've seen before. And I think there'll be some technology developed that'll really help with it too. Like doing this the way we're doing it right now is a little bit cumbersome. We'll see how it works out in editing, but
yeah, right.
Yeah. Well,
for those of you who don't know, Gary's literally on a tripod on my phone right now, and it would be nice to have like an actual legit interface.
Yeah.
To be able to do this.
Yeah, and not like enterprise level like a TriCaster or something that costs $40,000. Something that plugs into your phone would be amazing.
Yep.
But I think even a recorded FaceTime would be probably good for some things. I would shoot for a higher production quality than that, but
Yeah, I tried to start the FaceTime recording, but it was I didn't want to spend too long trying to get up to the right menu. So yeah, we'll just have to deal with this Sony camera quality, unfortunately.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been a lot of
Gary.
fun. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for wearing my face on your my crew guys all wore those to work one day. And we got Jeremy Jones to thank for this.
Yeah, we do. I bought the whole ensemble. So I've got a shirt for almost every day of the week.
So you got the Speedo as well?
I don't have the Speedo. that came out after I bought everything. So everything was out, and then that came out after I bought.
That's not really a high value product anyway. The only thing on there is my nose.
Well, thanks for sitting down and talking with us. I know everybody out there listening is appreciative of your time. And of course, for everyone watching on my video, I'll include links down to Gary's YouTube channel, his website. By the way, I think you need to do a little website upgrade.
Oh.
Because I went on there to do a little research on you last night.
Yeah.
And it's a landing page. It's just it's a landing page.
You know,
God.
it is, and I have an opinion about that. Actions speak louder than words, right? And
I suppose so.
I don't want to be the guy that lists out every gig he ever did and every artist he ever walked
What about
by
gear?
the bus, you know. I mean, it's that's just debagging, in my opinion. The only
Fair
thing
enough,
that
fair enough.
website really needs to do for me and my company is contact information, basically what we have to offer, basically the region that we offer it in. And there's really not much more. But you're right, I do need to update it.
I'm just digging on you a little bit. I had to find something because you got everything else is immaculate, it seems. So got to pick on something.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
All right. Well, I guess we'll have to continue that in another discussion.
yeah, another episode. Yeah,
Another episode. Yeah.
you know, one of the things I've kind of staked my success on is if you try to do something to make it better every single day, and you spread that out across 30 years, it eventually begins to add up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just spent my life waking up in the morning going, what can I do to make it better today? Well, that might be repacking some cables or building a divider in a road box or coming up with a better way to load the truck, or, you know, sometimes I'll come up with things that take 2 or 3 days to do and cost money. But at the end of the day, when we get to the show, it's going to be better. And if you go and do 100 shows with that, then it totally pays off. So, you know, a big part of being organized on the gigs really stems from that, because we're kind of using the same gear all the time. So it's
a bunch of Lego pieces.
Yeah. So we're continually kind of looking to improve the packaging. You know, even though it's the same gear, we want to be able to roll in there quicker and get it set up quicker and more efficient. You know, and be the cool guys.
Hey.
That's all we want to do, man. We just want to be cool.
It's true, because we were the not cool kids when we were growing up. So, you know, this is our opportunity.
Oh man, I was in the 3rd grade, and the neighbor man helped me build a portable speaker with a handle on it. And I saved up some lawn mowing money. I went down to Radio Shack, and I got a 150-foot spool of speaker wire. And I had a record player down in my room in the basement. And I hooked that little speaker up to that record player, and I ran that wire all the way up to the front porch. And what I would do is I would run home from school, and I would go get my little speaker, and I'd throw a record on, and I'd run that thing upstairs, and I would be casually sitting on the porch listening to my tunes when my heartthrob little Molly would go walking by.
Oh, man.
And now look how many girls show up to listen to my stereo.
Well, if we're going by 30,000 people, then I guess that's like 15,000 right there.
You know, at least half of them, right?
At a minimum.
Cool.
Cool, Gary. Thanks again.
Yeah, man.
I'm excited to put this together, and we'll talk to you soon.